What if I told you that Albert Einstein's greatest discoveries weren't just about physics, but about the human mind itself? What if the same patterns of thinking that led to EHMC2 are the exact same patterns that Carl Jung identified in the rarest personality types? And what if modern neuroscience has now proven that these patterns represent an entirely different way of processing reality? Before we dive into this fascinating connection, smash that subscribe button and hit the like button. You're about to discover why Einstein's documented thinking processes might be the key to understanding your own rare psychological makeup. Here's something most people don't know about Einstein. He wasn't just a brilliant physicist. He was a profound thinker about thinking itself. Throughout his life, he wrote extensively about how his mind worked. And when you read his own descriptions of his mental processes, something extraordinary emerges. The patterns he describes match almost perfectly with what Carl Jung identified as the cognitive functions of intuitive personality types. Let me start with something Einstein himself wrote. The important thing is not to stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existence. One cannot help but be in awe when he contemplates the mysteries of eternity, of life, of the marvelous structure of reality. This isn't the statement of someone who thinks in linear, logical steps. This is the voice of what Jung would call dominant introverted intuition, the cognitive function that drives INFJ and INTJ types. It's the relentless quest to understand the underlying principles that govern reality, the need to see the patterns behind the patterns. But Einstein went even deeper in describing his thinking process. In a letter to mathematician Jacques Hadamard, he wrote about what he called combinatory play, the mental activity that seemed to be the essential feature in productive thought. He described how words or language didn't seem to play any role in his mechanism of thought. Instead, he thought in what he called images and signs that could be voluntarily reproduced and combined. This is a perfect description of what Jung identified as the intuitive process. Jung wrote that intuition apprehends the possibilities, relationships, and meanings which are not apparent to conscious experience. Einstein was describing exactly this, a way of thinking that bypassed logical, sequential processing and instead made connections through pattern recognition and symbolic thinking. Now here's where it gets really fascinating. Einstein's approach to his greatest discoveries follows what Jung called the process of individuation, the journey toward becoming your authentic self by trusting your unique psychological makeup, even when it goes against conventional wisdom. When Einstein was developing his theory of special relativity, he didn't start with mathematical equations. He started with what he famously called thought experiments. He would imagine himself riding alongside a beam of light, or picture what would happen if he could travel at the speed of light. These weren't mathematical calculations. They were pure imaginative scenarios that allowed him to explore the implications of physical principles. This is exactly how INFP and INTP minds work. You don't think in step-by-step logical progressions like most people. Your minds make what seem like quantum leaps, using imagination and pattern recognition to arrive at insights that feel like they came from nowhere. Einstein called this process the mysterious, and he believed it was the source of all true art and science. But here's what makes Einstein's story even more relevant to understanding rare personality types. He was profoundly misunderstood for most of his early career. When he published his theory of special relativity in 1905, the scientific community largely ignored it. When he proposed that light could behave as both a wave and a particle, physicists thought he was confused. When he suggested that space and time were relative rather than absolute, he was dismissed as a dreamer. Sound familiar? If you're an INFJ, INFP, INTJ, or INTP, you've probably experienced this same pattern. You see connections and possibilities that others miss. You arrive at conclusions through processes that others can't follow, And when you try to share your insights, you're often met with skepticism or misunderstanding. Einstein understood this isolation intimately. He once wrote, "I live in that solitude which is painful in youth, but delicious in the years of maturity." This isn't the statement of someone who was antisocial. It's the recognition of someone who understood that his mind worked differently and that this difference required solitude to fully develop. This connects directly to what Jung identified as the introversion preference in rare types. Jung didn't mean shy or socially awkward when he used the term introversion. He meant that your primary orientation is toward your inner world of ideas, patterns, and possibilities. Einstein exemplified this perfectly. He needed long periods of solitude, not because he disliked people, but because his most important work happened in the quiet spaces of his own mind. Einstein's famous long walks through Princeton, his habit of playing violin when he was stuck on a problem, his tendency to stare into space for hours, these weren't eccentricities. They were the natural behaviors of a mind that processed information differently than most people. He was giving his intuitive functions the space and time they needed to make their mysterious connections. Now, let's talk about what happened when Einstein's brain was actually studied after his death in 1955. Dr. Thomas Harvey, the pathologist who performed the autopsy, preserved Einstein's brain for scientific study. Over the decades that followed, researchers made several remarkable discoveries that seemed to validate Jung's theories about different cognitive architectures. Einstein's brain showed several unusual characteristics. His parietal lobes, the areas responsible for spatial reasoning and mathematical thought, were significantly larger than average. But more intriguingly, his brain showed evidence of more connections between different regions, particularly between the left and right hemispheres. This finding is particularly relevant because modern neuroscience research has found similar patterns in people who score high on measures of creativity and intuitive thinking. Dr. Rex Jung's neuroimaging studies have shown that highly creative individuals tend to have more connections between different brain networks, allowing for more flexible and integrative thinking. While we can't definitively say that Einstein was an INFJ, INFP, INTJ, or INTP based on brain scans alone, we can say that his brain showed the kind of integrative, whole brain processing that characterizes intuitive thinking. His mind was literally wired for the kind of pattern recognition and creative synthesis that Jung identified as the hallmark of intuitive types. But Einstein's relevance to understanding rare personality types goes beyond just brain structure. His entire approach to learning and discovery demonstrates what Jung called the transcendent function, the ability to bridge conscious and unconscious knowledge to arrive at new insights. Einstein consistently described his greatest discoveries as coming not from logical analysis, but from what he called sudden illumination. He would work on a problem consciously for months or years, then set it aside. The solution would often come to him during a walk, while playing music, or in that drowsy state between waking and sleeping. This is a perfect description of how the unconscious mind processes information in intuitive types. Jung wrote extensively about how the unconscious continues to work on problems, even when the conscious mind has moved on to other things. The sudden aha moments that characterize creative insight happen when this unconscious processing breaks through into consciousness. Einstein understood this process so well that he deliberately cultivated it. He would immerse himself in a problem until he had absorbed all the relevant information. Then he would deliberately distract his conscious mind with music, walking, or other activities. He trusted that his unconscious mind would continue working on the problem and eventually deliver a solution. This is exactly the kind of trust in your own psychological processes that Jung identified as essential for individuation. Most people are taught to rely only on logical, sequential thinking, but Einstein had the courage to trust his intuitive processes, even when they led him to conclusions that seemed impossible to others. Consider his development of the general theory of relativity. The mathematical framework for this theory is incredibly complex, involving advanced tensor calculus and non-Euclidean geometry. But Einstein didn't start with the math. He started with what he called the principle of equivalence, the insight that acceleration and gravity are fundamentally the same phenomenon. This insight came to him by his own account as a sudden realization while he was thinking about a person falling from a roof. In that moment of free fall, the person wouldn't feel their own weight. They would be weightless. This simple thought experiment led him to one of the most profound insights in the history of physics, that gravity isn't a force pulling objects together, but a curvature in the fabric of space-time itself. This is classic intuitive processing. Einstein took a simple, everyday scenario and used it to illuminate a fundamental principle of reality. He didn't arrive at this insight through logical deduction. He arrived at it through what Jung would call symbolic thinking, the ability to see universal principles reflected in specific situations. But here's what makes Einstein's story so relevant to your own journey as a rare type. He had to fight for his insights every step of the way. The scientific establishment of his time was deeply invested in Newtonian physics, which described a universe of absolute space and time. Einstein's theories challenged these fundamental assumptions, and many physicists resisted his ideas for decades. Einstein persisted, not because he was stubborn, but because he had learned to trust his own cognitive processes. He understood that his mind worked differently than most people's, and he had the courage to follow his insights even when they contradicted conventional wisdom. This is perhaps the most important lesson that Einstein's life offers to INFJs, INFPs, INTJs, and INTPs. Your minds are designed to see possibilities and connections that others miss. But this gift comes with the responsibility to trust your own perceptions, even when others don't understand or accept them. Einstein once wrote, "A new type of thinking is essential if mankind is to survive and move toward higher levels." He wasn't just talking about scientific thinking. He was talking about the kind of integrative, intuitive thinking that rare personality types do naturally. Your minds are literally evolved for the complex, interconnected challenges that humanity faces. But Einstein also understood the loneliness that comes with this kind of thinking. He wrote, "The person with a scientific mind does not understand why he should believe on faith alone, without logical explanation, any conception about the nature of things." Yet he also recognized that the most profound insights often come through processes that can't be logically explained. This tension between rational analysis and intuitive insight is something that every rare type struggles with. You live in a world that values logical, sequential thinking, but your greatest gifts come through processes that seem almost magical to others. Einstein's life demonstrates that it's possible to honor both aspects of your mind, to be rigorously logical when logic is called for, but also to trust your intuitive insights when they point toward new possibilities. Let me give you some practical ways to embrace your Einstein-like mental architecture. First, honor your need for what Einstein called combinatory play. Set aside time regularly for unstructured thinking. Let your mind wander. Play with ideas without trying to force them into logical frameworks. Some of your best insights will come during these periods of mental freedom. Second, develop what Einstein called beginner's mind. He said, "The important thing is not to stop questioning." Your rare type gives you the ability to see familiar things with fresh eyes. Don't let education or experience close off your natural curiosity. Keep asking, what if and why not? Third, learn to trust your intuitive leaps. Einstein said that his initial insights often came as complete, fully formed ideas that he then had to work backward to understand logically. Your first insights are often your best insights. Learn to capture them before your rational mind talks you out of them. Fourth, create your own version of Einstein's thought experiments. He used visualization and imagination to explore complex concepts before he tried to express them mathematically. Whether you're an artist, a writer, a scientist, or anything else, learn to play with ideas in your mind before you try to implement them in the real world. Fifth, embrace what Einstein called the mysterious. He wrote, "The most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. It is the source of all true art and science." Your rare type makes you sensitive to the deeper patterns and meanings that others miss. Don't try to explain away this sensitivity. Celebrate it as one of your greatest gifts. And finally, remember that Einstein's greatest discoveries came from his willingness to be wrong. He said, "A person who never made a mistake never tried anything new." Your rare type makes you sensitive to criticism, but don't let that stop you from sharing your unique perspective with the world. The world needs your insights, even if it doesn't always appreciate them immediately. Einstein's later years offer another important lesson for rare types. As he became more famous, he also became more isolated from the scientific community. His quest for a theory of everything that would unify all the forces of nature was largely dismissed by other physicists. But he continued working on it until the end of his life, driven by his vision of a deeper unity underlying all of reality. This persistence in the face of skepticism is characteristic of the rare types. You see possibilities that others can't see, and you're willing to pursue them even when others think you're wasting your time. Einstein's example shows that this persistence isn't stubbornness. It's faithfulness to your own deepest insights about the nature of reality. Einstein also demonstrated another quality that's essential for rare types: the ability to find meaning in apparent failure. Many of his later theories were never proven correct, and some were later shown to be wrong. But he didn't see this as failure. He saw it as part of the process of discovery. He understood that exploring the boundaries of the possible is valuable in itself, even when it doesn't lead to immediate practical results. This perspective is crucial for INFJs, INFPs, INTJs, and INTPs, who often struggle with perfectionism and fear of failure. Einstein's example shows that the value of your thinking isn't measured only by immediate practical results, but by your willingness to explore new possibilities and push the boundaries of what's known. Perhaps most importantly, Einstein's life demonstrates that being a rare type isn't just about having unusual cognitive abilities. It's about having the courage to use those abilities in service of something greater than yourself. Einstein could have used his genius for personal gain, but instead he dedicated his life to understanding the fundamental nature of reality. In his later years, he became an advocate for peace, civil rights, and social justice. This sense of purpose beyond personal success is characteristic of the rare types. You're not just different, you're different for a reason. Your unique perspective on reality comes with the responsibility to use that perspective to make the world better in some way. Einstein once said, "Try not to become a person of success, but rather try to become a person of value." Your value as a rare type isn't in fitting in or thinking like everyone else. Your value is in being exactly who you are, a mind capable of seeing what others cannot see, of making connections that others cannot make, of imagining possibilities that others cannot imagine. The world needs your Einstein-like mind now more than ever. We face challenges that require exactly the kind of integrative, intuitive thinking that you do naturally. Climate change, social inequality, technological disruption, these are complex, interconnected problems that can't be solved through linear, logical thinking alone. They require the ability to see patterns, make connections, and imagine new possibilities. Einstein understood that the problems we face can't be solved at the same level of thinking that created them. We need what he called a new type of thinking, the kind of thinking that you, as a rare type, are naturally equipped to provide. But remember, Einstein's genius wasn't just in his ability to think differently. It was in his courage to trust his different way of thinking, even when it led him into uncharted territory. He had the confidence to follow his insights wherever they led, even when they contradicted everything that was known at the time. This is the challenge and the opportunity that faces you as a rare type. You have access to ways of thinking and perceiving that most people don't have. But having these abilities isn't enough. You have to have the courage to use them, to trust them, and to share their fruits with the world. Einstein's life proves that it's possible to honor your rare psychological makeup while still making meaningful contributions to the world. He didn't try to think like other scientists. He trusted his own unique cognitive processes and used them to revolutionize our understanding of reality. You don't have to be the next Einstein to make your own unique contribution, but you do have to be willing to trust your own mind, to follow your own insights, and to persist in the face of misunderstanding or skepticism. The world is waiting for what only you can see, what only you can imagine, what only you can create. If this exploration of Einstein's mind has helped you understand your own rare psychological makeup, share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. Comment below and tell me which aspects of Einstein's thinking process resonate most with your own experience. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel, because we're building a community of rare minds who understand that our differences aren't just quirks, but gifts that the world desperately needs. Remember, in a universe that often seems too small for your big thoughts and deep feelings, you're not alone. You're in the company of the greatest minds in history. And that, my friend, is exactly where you belong.